Look, it's rare that a sequel is better than the original. But when it is, it's generally really good. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Delray. Yeah, it's another short week, kind of, as the Packers are getting ready for another Thursday night football matchup against the Detroit Lions. Of course, as you know, we will be here doing a watch party tomorrow night, so please come join us if you're looking for someone to hang out with the game with. But today, we're going to go through some of the nitty-gritty, the details about Lions versus Packers, including the injury report, what other news there is, etc., etc. Before we really get to that, though, I do want to just, keep in mind some things as we venture on. Yes, the Detroit Lions are an incredibly good football team, and you're going to hear me say that a lot. They're 11-1, top in the conference. We know all these things. They're very, very good. And I'll go into a little bit of detail as to how they're good. We also know that in Week 9, the Green Bay Packers got gobsmacked 24-14 in Lambeau Field. And much of the Lions team that did that beatdown is still the Lions team that's going to be out there, a month later tomorrow. Not all of them, though, and that is a pretty key difference that we're going to talk about with the injury report. But also keep in mind, too, that it was a game that featured Elgton Jenkins as the backup center that had 3 botched snaps. It was a game where Jordan Love had one of those awful pick sixes where his body contorted and flopped over like a pancake that wasn't ready to be flipped. It was one of those, right? And it also featured a lack of Jair Alexander, which unfortunately that's going to be remaining true tomorrow as well. But I do want to point out, in matchup 1, the Packers outgained the Lions 411-261. They won pass yardage, rush yardage, yards per play. They had more first downs. They also had more sacks. But where they lost was the punt count, turnovers, time of possession, third and fourth down efficiency. And they also doubled the amount of penalties that the Lions had in matchup number 1. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about how the Detroit Lions are really, really good. And rightfully so. They are. But if the Packers play a cleaner game than they did a month ago, this absolutely should be a contest. So let's get to it. The injury report for the Green Bay Packers. I know it's a lengthy list, but as I said yesterday, for many of them, not much of a concern. Out for the Green Bay Packers is Romeo Doubs, Jair Alexander, Corey Ballantyne, and Edgerrin Cooper. And to sum up my thoughts here, it basically is, damn it. We were so close, right? We read earlier in the week about how Romeo Doubs, Jair Alexander were back in some kind of limited capacity. But then LaFleur yesterday gave his press conference and said that Doubs, in spite of practicing in a limited capacity, was still in concussion protocol. It appears as though he still is as he's out. When it comes to Jair Alexander, we had hope there because he was getting in limited practice, but LaFleur said that they would need to go review the film, talk to the doctors, see how Jair was moving on the practice field in order to make some kind of declaration. Apparently he wasn't moving well enough, and his streak of not playing against the division continues. In fact, he's played 10 snaps against the division this year, and that was just in the game against Chicago where he left early. And then, of course, Edgerrin Cooper, Corey Ballantyne, those were both pretty well expected. So ultimately, when it comes to replacing these guys, Jair, replacing him, it's just going to be more of the same, more Valentine Stokes, right? When it comes to replacing Doubs, I think it'll be very, very similar to what we saw last week. Dontavian Wicks gets a large uptick in snaps, but when it comes to needing those third down beaters, especially those in-breakers, right, that they use to beat man coverage in third and short situations, some of that will be Wicks. It also will be some Jaden Reed mixed in for those route assignments as well. Then when it comes to Edgerrin Cooper being out, yes, that's a loss against Detroit for sure, although an expected one. Hopefully, if Quay Walker continue playing like he's played the last 2 weeks, should be okay. Packers are going to need him to play like the last 2. As for the Lions, now their list here on the graphic, it doesn't appear as long. And then you look at their IR. Holy crap. Basically, out for the Detroit Lions, they have 4 individuals themselves. 1, Taylor Decker, starting left tackle. He's out for another week. Then you've got Levi Onwuzurike, the defensive tackle. He's out. He's actually the number 3 defensive tackle on the depth chart. Well, he's out. DJ Reader, the number 2 defensive tackle on the depth chart, also out. And then Josh Pascal, starting defensive end, also out. So that's 4 members of their trenches out. Plus, notables on IR for the Detroit Lions. It's super interesting. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson and Khalif Raymond, the wide receiver. But then, Makai Wingo, defensive lineman, Alex Anzalone, linebacker, Jalen Reeves Maben, linebacker, Malcolm Rodriguez, linebacker, and cornerback Ennis Rakestraw. They are positively decimated along the front. Expect Broderick Martin to fill in when another D-line body is needed, as well as El Quandin Muhammad will fill in for Pascal at defensive end as he did last week. Perhaps a couple new free agent additions like Jonah Williams, Miles Adam could actually get some play here. And then these are guys, like, keep in mind, they're signed off of practice squads. That's how far down the Lions are getting. And then also, as Lions sites have noted, one of the things that defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn has done in the last couple of weeks to compensate for all these injuries, he's rolled out a lot more nickel. So I think given all of this, you can expect that nickel defense might just straight up become the base defense for the Detroit Lions tomorrow. Offensively, yeah, I think they're going to do the same thing that they've done with Taylor Decker being out. That's Dan Skipper just going in at left tackle, leaving Penei Sewell on the right side. Some Lions fans seem to want to swap that, but Sewell's just so freaking good. Looks like the Lions may just leave him alone. So, one thing that I want to make perfectly clear. Most of the Lions squad, same as it was a month ago. Not the front, though, especially not the defensive front. They are now missing 4 of their top 5 linebackers. They're also currently slated to start defensive tackle number 4, maybe 5, depending on where in the year you're looking at the depth chart. They are relying on guys that they've poached off of other teams' practice squads to be in rotations tomorrow. This should give a lot of openings for Green Bay. Detroit relies on winning in the trenches. That did get a lot harder for Detroit given this injury slate. Also, one in full transparency, right? One change. They have Zadarius Smith now. Last time Packers played him, they faced a team that was without Aiden Hutchinson, but Z wasn't there yet. Z's there now. So just keep that in mind. So, who are the Detroit Lions? Well, they're the cream of the crop in the NFC. That's who. They're the top seed in the conference. They are sitting at 11-1. And if you are a DVOA believer, through 12 weeks, they are the 7th best team ever. Yeah, 7th best team ever through 12 weeks per DVOA's tracking. They also are leading the NFL in points per game. They've posted at least 40 points in 33% of their games. They've held opponents to under 14 in 50% of their games. 14 or under, in 50% of their games. They are a very, very good team. And if the Packers are going to get themselves a victory here, there are some definite weaknesses that they're going to have to exploit. As for who those wins-losses have come across, their only loss of the year was to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 2 when they fell 20-16, and they were at home for that loss. So the Packers can double their home loss total. Then for wins against, they've rattled off wins against the Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks, Cowboys, Vikings, Titans, Packers, Texans, Jaguars, Colts, and Bears. Since playing the Packers in Week 9, they've beaten the Texans by 3, the Jaguars by 46, the Colts by 18, and most recently, they played the Bears on Thanksgiving, and the Bears Eberflused it up and lost by a field goal. I put a lot of blame on Caleb Williams for that and went down, but to say that you Eberflused it up is fun, and I'm going to roll with it from here on out. Let's take a look at the Detroit Lions depth chart, shall we? Well, they got Jared Goff starting there at QB, one of the top 5 odds getters for MVP right now. There he is, Jared Goff. Then at running back, obviously David Montgomery is listed first, and he was used like it last week against Chicago, but then don't be mistaken, Jahmyr Gibbs is on the field plenty. In fact, he's just behind David Montgomery in total carry count. Then, one thing that the Lions have done over the last couple weeks is rely just on their top 3 wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick. They roll out Allen Robinson very, very little. Besides running back, which is basically like an even split, they do not dive into the depth of their offensive playmakers very often at all. You're going to see a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Tim Patrick, as well as Sam Laporta at tight end. Then for the offensive line, we know Taylor Decker is out. Expect Dan Skipper to go right in there. But then they've got Glasgow, Zeitler, 2 of the leading vote getters for Pro Bowl, as it stands right now. Regnow at center, and then Sewell at right tackle. Then for their 4-3 defense, former Packer, Z, Yeah, he's there now. Then Alquindin Muhammad was the guy who filled in for Pascal last week. I'd expect that to be the same. McNeil is their one defensive tackle left standing, really. The guys that I mentioned that may fill in that were practice squad signings, Miles Adams, Jonah Williams. Yeah, you're getting pretty far down. Looking at linebacker, again, it's kind of like, who? They signed Quan Alexander off of another team's practice squad earlier this week. Maybe he gets a little bit of play. But what we're really looking at is Jack Campbell and some dudes. Nowaski and Turner going to be projected as the current starters. Then in the secondary, as opposed to the rest of the team, the secondary is actually getting healthier. Carlton Davis is back this week after missing last week. Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, one of the best safety tandems in the league, if not the best. Then you got Tyrion Arnold, who's been kind of in and out. Still having a very good rookie year, though, starting at corner, and then Amik Robertson as their nickel. In terms of special teams, Jake Bates, Jack Fox, two of the best special teamers at their respective positions thus far on the year. So, as for some stats about the Lions, in terms of rushing, over the last 3 weeks, the Detroit Lions allow 71.7 yards per game on the ground. That is fourth best in the NFL. However, teams run on them less than any team in the NFL as well. Only 17.7 attempts per game over the last 3 weeks. In terms of passing defense, they're giving up 174.7 yards per game through the air. That's fourth best in the NFL. And they're also facing the 12th fewest attempts against them in the NFL. Basically, look at it this way. They are dead last in runs against them. They are 12th fewest in passes against them. What does that tell you? They just don't allow offenses to run that many plays against them. The Detroit Lions love to win time of possession. They love to win total play counts. It's how they play. A key to this game for the Packers is getting off more plays. Kind of like they did last time, because they outplayed the Lions last time in terms of pure play count, but that game was just fluky in a whole bunch of ways. Then in terms of full defense, like season stats, we're looking at points per game. They are second in the NFL, allowing 16.9 per game. And then in the red zone, they are the second best defense in the NFL in the red zone, allowing only 41.94% of drives that wind up in the red zone to actually go for touchdowns. And if you're getting the feeling of like, I think the Packers have played all of the best red zone defenses in the NFL, yeah, it's because they have. Moving on over to the offensive side of the ball. In terms of rushing, they're the second best rushing team in the NFL over the last 3, getting 175.7 yards per game on the ground. And very correlating with that, they run the ball second most in the NFL. In terms of passing, they're putting up 304.3 yards per game through the air. That's fourth best in the NFL. And in terms of attempts, this is where they're actually beating themselves here. 14th in attempts, fourth in yardage output. That generally is indicative of a very good passing offense. One little side note that I noticed about Green Bay here. Green Bay has attempted the fewest passes per game in the NFL over the last 3 weeks. When's the last time you thought you would have heard that? Then over the full season for the Lions offense, they're putting up 31.9 points per game. That's best in the NFL. Red zone, they're scoring 66% on their tries into touchdowns. That's sixth best in the NFL. Turnovers, they're at a positive 0.7 per game. Seventh in the NFL. Green Bay happens to be just edging them out there. In terms of sacks per game, they get 2.5 sacks per game. That's 14th. They give up 2 sacks per game. That's ninth best in the NFL. Penalties, they're 6.2, which is 15th. And however, one thing with that though, they get 6.2 penalties called on them per game. However, they get 60 penalty yards against them per game. That's 29th in the NFL. So when the Lions do commit penalties, they are of the larger variety. Okay, that's who the Lions are in a nutshell from the pure, large scale stats. So ultimately, how does the Packers defense, especially without Jair Alexander and Adrian Cooper, handle the Lions offense? Well, let's start looking at what we know. The Lions want to run. They want to make sure that they own time of possession. They want to make sure that they run more plays. And when they do run, we also can acknowledge from the numbers that they're much better at running within the tackles than they are outside of the tackles. Frankly, for Green Bay, that's a plus because Green Bay is much better at defending the run inside the tackles than outside of the tackles. But there's something else that we can acknowledge that's changed a little bit over the course of the last month as well. And that happens to be Jared Goff's regression to the mean when it comes to facing pressure. See, a month ago when we got together and talked about the Lions, it was kind of odd because Jared Goff, who is a guy who throughout his whole career had struggled against pressure, all of a sudden in 2024, he wasn't like at all. That's beginning to change. See, on the year now, like some of these stats are catching up because when Jared Goff is under pressure now, which he is on nearly 33% of his dropbacks at this point, his QB rating falls over 40%. His turnover-worthy play rate goes up 2 points. His completion percentage drops over 20%. His yards per attempt goes down over 1.5 yards, which his average depth of target goes up nearly 3 yards, which means Jared Goff has gone from this check down artist to Mauer. Like when he's getting pressured, now he'll chuck it deep. And that might also be why the turnover play rate is going up, but it's not working, as you can tell in the yards per attempt. Also, a weird carryover from last year. His numbers are worse when throwing to the left than they are to the right. This has been a thing for Goff for years. I talked about it a bunch last year. It was a lot more stark last year, but it's a thing. The category this year that he just cannot throw to is by far the deep left. We're talking throws over 20 yards, deep left quadrant of the field. His QB rating there is only 44.9. Okay, so ultimately, Lions are going to look to run. We know it. In the last 2 weeks, Green Bay has completely shut down some of the best running back tandems in the NFL, right? San Francisco, they completely shut down Christian McCaffrey. Last week, they completely shut down Achane and Mostert. And it's not because of some like revolutionary schematic change that Jeff Hafley just became a run defense wizard. No, it's actually mainly happened because of better tackling and substantially more competent linebacker play, with a dash of like Javon Bullard improving in that realm as well. But the growth that we've seen from Quay Walker, the outstanding performance that we saw last Thursday from Isaiah McDuffie, these are all things that naturally are solving the run defense without blowing up the plan. If Green Bay can continue to pressure like they have in the last couple of weeks, get after Goff. If they can continue to fill run lanes and tackle better, then ultimately they should be okay. So I'm not clamoring for some large-scale change here. I really think the best way to handle the Lions' offense is kind of keep what they're doing. As for how to beat the Lions' defense, well, right now, there's a pretty clear path. And frankly, I think it comes down to two wonderful football cliches. Out-bully the bullies and run the damn ball. The Lions, we know, they are completely hobbled in the front seven right now. Their secondary, on the other hand, is seemingly getting healthier. I'm not necessarily worried about having to pass because I don't think the Packers are going to ask Jordan Love to pass all that much. But it should be noted, Jordan Love is at like his most efficient ever right now. No, he's not putting up these incredible stats with 400-yard passing games, 4 touchdowns. No. But what he is doing is he's making excellent decision-making. His accuracy is up. His completion percentage is up, et cetera, over the last stretch of games, especially over the last 2 weeks. So I think I don't have any problem with this continuing to be the trend of Jordan Love gets 22 pass attempts, and yet between the Packers' stable of running backs, there's 40 rushing attempts. I think this is a game where they walk in and they say, hey, it's not our fault your front is decimated, but we're going to Josh Jacobs you. And then we're going to dash in some Emmanuel Wilson. And then Chris Brooks, when it looks like he's going to do pass pro, he's going to get the ball and he's going to break like 18 tackles. Sorry. I think that that's the plan, right? And I want to see what LaFleur has called in the last 2 weeks, going back to some of these ultra creative run schemes. We need to see that against Detroit. They're rolling out guys who are practice squad players. So exploit that weakness and go get them. So both teams right now have some of their best players out. You could say Detroit has more. You certainly can say Detroit's depth is worse. So for Green Bay, go in there, be what you've been over the last 2 weeks, and assert your stake over the best team in the conference. So we'll see. I think I've seen some people saying that there's defensive injuries on both sides. Get ready for a shootout. I think this is more likely to be a slugfest in a dome, to be honest with you. So I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring affair. Let's go Green Bay 24, Detroit 20. in what is, I think that this is the week. I think that earlier in the season we talked about, hey, like, I don't like the timing of Minnesota catching Green Bay. This doesn't line up with our injuries well. I said that about the first Detroit matchup as well. It just feels like a lot of these division matchups have come at bad times for Green Bay. Now, though, it feels like Green Bay is on the other side of the seesaw, and they seem to be the one to benefit going against a team that is injury-ridden. I think that could equal good things for Green Bay. Just don't underestimate just how talented the Detroit Lions are. So Green Bay 24, Detroit 20. See you at the watch party tomorrow night. Hope everyone's having an absolutely fantastic Wednesday. And as always, go Pack Go.